I think it's pretty safe to say that Neil Peart of Rush has achieved a genuine legendary drummer status during his 20-plus year career with one of the world's greatest selling power trios. Now, during the off-season, the band likes to do pretty normal family stuff, but this year Neil Peart did something kind of different. He paid tribute to another legendary drummer. Ask anyone who plays the drums about Buddy Rich, and they'll tell you that Buddy was one of the first star drummers on the North American music scene. Buddy Rich cut his teeth with the legendary big bands of the 1930s and 1940s before cutting out on his own. Over the next 4 decades, right up until his death in 1987, Buddy Rich did things with a drum kit that nobody had ever seen or heard before. In fact, Buddy laid much of the groundwork for a lot of what you hear from today's modern drummers, including Rush's Neil Peart. Now, a short while back, Neil hooked up with Kathy Rich, Buddy Rich's daughter, and she asked him to produce an album called Burning for Buddy, which was to be a tribute album to the man that many called the world's greatest drummer. Perhaps not surprisingly, many of today's greatest drummers were more than eager to take part in the project, even though many of them had never played anything remotely like big band jazz music before. For instance, Guns N' Roses' Matt Sorum, Yes's Bill Bruford, and Kenny Aronoff from John Cougar Mellencamp's band all took part in the project. Incidentally, if you're ever going to buy a big band album, this may as well be the one. Now, in just a few minutes, you're going to see Neil Peart like you've never seen him before, plus a couple of Rush videos thrown in for good measure, as we check out Neil Peart's tribute to the late, great Buddy Rich.
Neil was the perfect person to take the reins on this project because his feeling for the music and his feeling for Buddy was beyond anything you could have hoped for. His dedication and his commitment to the project, and just his whole feeling about Buddy, and putting the record together and really sticking with it when people told him not to. And, again, it's you stick with what you believe in, and it gets done.
Of course, 99.9% of the people watching our conversation know you as the drummer of Rush. And Rush, obviously, is a rock and roll band. And so I don't think that a lot of people will be aware that one of the key things that makes jazz music, improvisation, is actually an important part of what you guys have been doing in Rush for a long time, and especially you as a drummer.
Sure, and the kinship that I feel with big band music is really the only other style of music as a drummer that I would find satisfying other than what I do with Rush. And after almost 30 years of playing, and in the freedom of what we have in Rush, I've been able to play exactly the way that I like to play. And our music is well structured, carefully arranged, but perfectly free within that arrangement. And that's exactly what big band music is. It's jazz and still allows the conversational aspect of it. I don't think there is another drummer as band leader that you could make a tribute like this around, and hardly any big band music that spans such a stylistic scope. When Buddy took a drum break, it could go anywhere, Again, he was a very spontaneous kind of player, so the musicians knew, first of all, as a matter of courtesy, watch Buddy when he does a solo or a drum break, so that the band's looking at him and not, staring down at the floor, but also to know where to come in, because he would just go and then count the band in, so they had to be ready for anything. So these old charts came out for some of the, like the one I did, Cottontail, is an old Duke Ellington tune that was given a fresh arrangement for Buddy, I think around the 70s or so. But even so, that chart was played a lot, and it showed it. Roaches have been eating at it.
it possible to say whether you model your own playing after his in any regard? Stylistically or technically?
Not directly, but the values are similar, and one of the reasons I chose the title Burning for Buddy is because it is like a big torch, a collective torch that generations of drummers, only in this century really, since the drum kit has existed, but everybody's been passing it forward and absorbing it. And for instance, in the 70s, I was influenced a lot by Billy Cobham, and I didn't know about Tony Williams, but of course Billy learned from Tony Williams, who learned from Elvin Jones, and now that I've become more aware of the history and taken the trouble to research it and wanting to know who all these guys are, now I know what the thread of that torch is, you know, how that torch was passed forward and continues to be. So someone like Buddy comes along and raises the ante so much in what it takes to be considered a good drummer.
Stylistically, do you think you'll take anything back from this project to Rush?
Honestly, no. I really see it as a side project in the true sense, and probably the closest I'll ever get to doing a solo record. It's the only little thing that I might have wanted to express outside of what I get to do in Rush, which is so free-ranging. And I've been playing almost 30 years now in a style that is so much me, you know, so much an expression of my athletic approach to life, my analytical approach to music, my desire to take on fresh challenges all the time. All of that is reflected in my drumming, so it's going to evolve, and I certainly spend a lot of time thinking about that evolution, but it's not going to undergo a complete revolution. The comparison I've often made, it was the one time when popular music was the best music. It was the best musicians playing the best tunes and the best arrangements, and it was full of tremendous technical prowess. You know, everything was in there, and it was also the music that people danced to, and the music that people heard on the radio. And I don't think that ever happened before, and it certainly hasn't happened since, so that perfect synchronicity, it must have been so great for the musicians at the time.